Michael Jackson, the self-styled king of pop, who has died suddenly aged 50 after being taken to hospital in Los Angeles, was musical royalty, one of its big stars and holder, for Thriller, of the record for the best-selling album in history. Eventually, however, his bizarre lifestyle and personal notoriety eclipsed his talent and his numerous achievements. Fame from, uh, Fame from the age of 11, when he was lead singer of the first black boy band, the Jackson 5, had such a demanding effect that his life was primarily affected. A combination of dysfunctional family and invasive fame ate away at the essentially private singer, whose initially minor uh, eccentric, eccentricities escalated into grotesque change of his appearance and lifestyle. Ultimately, it led to accusation of pedophi- pe- pedophilia, and a criminal persecution. If ever there was an illustration of the adage and celebrity destroys was what it touched, Jackson was it. Highly sensitive and impressionable, he was unsuited to fame. Ironic, given that became one of the most recognized faces in the world. Despite loving the racial dance of performance, even his off-duty wardrobe, with its epauletted jackets, looked like strange wear. He was crushed by the pressure of maintaining a cherubic public persona. He probably would have been happiest working behind the scene, in the mode of his collaboration and mentor Quincy Jones, producer of the 50 selling Thriller. Jackson's success deprived him of his childhood. At least, that was the stock explanation for his more outlandish behavior. From the age of 10, he spent most of his time recording and touring, and consequently spent the rest of his life hearing for what he thought he had lost. As an adult, he attempted to recreate the lost childhood, enabled by a fortune that was at one time estimated to be in the hundreds of millions of dollars. He indulged himself by turning his California ranch, Neverland, into a fanfare, complete with zoo, over which he proceeded, dressed in his toy soldier gear. His closest friendship were with the fellow ex-child star Elizabeth Taylor, a chimpanzee called Bubbles, who traveled with him till it grew too large and dangerous, and ambiguously with children. He once said that if there were no children in the world, he would have no reason to exist. His bond with them influenced almost everything he did. He worked extensively with underprivileged youngsters, opening Neverland to them, and even taking one or another favorite child on tour. He had a great interest in young people from all over the world, even once proposing to adopt a boy and a girl from each continent. At the 1996 BERT Award, he was accompanied on stage by a children's choir, promoting prompting a stage invasion by Jarvis Cocker of Pulp, who claimed his attitude was messiah-like. Sidestepping the accusation, Jackson claimed Cocker was just jealous of his popularity. His relations with kids were healthy. Jackson argued he was simply attached by their purity and innocence. The same qualities were attributed to him by his extraordinarily loyal fans. Jackson was, in their view, grievously maligned, a satirically character whose good intentions were destroyed by a malicious press. During pre-trial hearings of his child molestation case in 2004, fans outside the court waved banners reading "Innocent until proved innocent." Journalists who wrote negatively about Jackson could expect a bombardment of angry letters. He was born in Gary, Indiana. Within weeks, coincidentally, of his main 98 rivals and fellow Midwestern Madonna and Prince. His parents and 8 siblings sequenced into a 2 bedrooms house on a street that was later renamed Jackson Boulevard in their honor. Coached by his father Joe, a street mill worker, Michael and older brothers Jeremy, Marlon, Jackie, and Tito formed a singing group. Despite shyness that he never overcame, he was a natural singer and dancer, and took to the frontman role with relish. By the age of 6, the young Jacksons were playing strip clubs and burlesque places, the only venues open on them in Gary. Joe was disciplinarian who ruled the family with a iron rod. The brothers, who were brought up as Jehovah's Witnesses, were not allowed to visit friends and were made to rehearse into the night. In adulthood, Michael revealed that his father beat him for the most minor transgressions, so terrifying him that there were times when he'd come to see me and I would start to be sick. Tito claimed Michael's dance routines evolved from the fancy footwork he employed dogging his father's first. In a 2003 TV interview, Joe claimed his son had exaggerated. I whipped him with a switch and belt, but I never beat him. You beat someone with a stick. He agreed that the whippings had made him one of the best artists in the world. Joe also tainted him about his ugliness and adolescent skin problems, showing self-doubt that later manifests itself in cosmetic surgery fixation. The child group made their name in the Midwest, and by 1978 came to the attention of Motown Records. Michael was by them an obvious star in waiting. At 10 years old, with an unusually adult feel for soul music, his singing was at once poised and youngful, exuberant, his dancing fluid and instinctive. Motown president Barry Gordy said of his first glimpse of Michael. He sang his songs with such feeling, inspiration, and pain, like he had experienced everything he was singing about. The Jackson 5 first Motown single, I Want You Back, reached number one in America, as would their next three singles, in 1979. The Youngful Band were an instant hit with Prebutious Girls, mains black girls, but also some white ones. Michael, the popular object of their desire, had just turned 11 and would never be able to walk down the street unrecognized again. The band's working life was brutal. When they were not in studios, they were on tour, sometimes playing 45 shows in 90 days. As lead singer, Michael Shadow was more onerous than that of his brothers. After 3 hours daily touring, he spent the rest of the day recording the 13 albums the Jackson realized for Motown between 1969 and 1969 and 1975. From the studio window, he watched ordinary children playing and would always cry from loneliness. Groomed for Orso's career, he started to make recordings outside the band that were released currently with Jackson 5 material. He was popular as solo act as he was a band member. Almost uniquely for a child star, he retained his popularity even when his voice changed. That said, his first few solo records as a 13 years old were nothing special. A case in point being his sugary ode to a rat named Ben. Young adulthood was when he came into his own and became, as Taylor apparently first dubbed him, King of Pop. Finally, three of his father and Motown, and working closely with Quincy Jones, whom he had met while playing a scarecrow in the 1978 film The Weeds. His commercial pop genius was realized. He had half a decade to extraordinary creativity that yielded two epochal albums, 1979's of the Wall and 1982 Thriller. This transformed him from teen idol to boundary-crossing superstar. Though still committed in 1979 to the Jackson, the five having been dropped for recording work, he put all his energy into Off the Wall. It already he heralded his arrival as a major star. Released just before his 21st birthday, is portended the dominance of R&B, especially Jackson's style of superbly slick, catchy R&B in the culture through the 98s and 90s. It was the first American album to produce four number one singles and sold 7 million copies in 7 million copies in America alone. The grueling work schedule that exacted such a price during his childhood had also honed his musical skills, and he was at the top of his game. Thriller was the one that broke all records, and turned him into a phenomenon. No one for 37 weeks in the USA's number one for the 37 weeks in the US. It went on to win the 8 Grammy Awards and sell an estimated 50 million copies. Jackson's stroke of inspiration was to fuse black R&B, and white rock, something that is new routine, but had not at that point been attempted by a big-name pop act. MTV, which had hitherto readily aired black acts, seized on the album singles such as Billie Jean and Beat It, and played them to death. Jackson even drew in a little something for the parents, a duet with Paul McCartney. That relationship ended acrimoniously when Jackson outbeat McCartney, and the Beatles' publishing catalog came up for sale in 1985. Essentially, Jackson now owned all of McCartney's in 96 songs. The purchase for several $100 million was one of the more astute. Later, he would fritter away a large part of his fortune on never-released projects, such as a theme park dedicated to racial harmony. He also developed a taste for enormously expensive and tasteless furnishings, responsibly slipping up to $1 million and a time in Las Vegas shopping malls. The photo of him of the cover of Thriller was the last album sleeve on which he looked that he was a young male with perceptibly African-American features. Around that time, his skin color began subtly to lighten. He claimed it was caused by the pigmentation disorder vitiligo. But rumors suggest he had bleached his skin. His features also began to be altered by plastic surgery. His nose slimmed down, a cleft appearing in his chin. His eyelids reputedly were lifted, and his lips tined. As his appearance changed, rumors about his lifestyle proliferated. Jackson supposedly slept in an oxygen tent, clothed Bubbles his matching outfits and offered to buy the Elephant Man's bones. He began to appear in public wearing a surgical mask and seemed to be asexual with no significant relationship during his 20s. The changes changed that changed in 1994 when he married Elvis Presley's daughter, Lisa Mary, a union that lasted 2 years and excited a great deal of speculation. The year before, Jackson had been accused of sexually molesting a 13-year-old boy, tipping him into the worst crisis of his personal and professional life to that point. He eventually settled out of court, paying the boy millions in return for dropping the case, but his career never quite recovered. It was rumored that the marriage was an attempt to normalize his image. Instead, he seemed all the stranger. His second marriage to his dermatologist nurse, Debbie Rowe, in 1996 was equally perplexing to everyone but the couples themselves. They seemed to spend little time together, but Rowe produced his first two children, son Prince Michael and daughter Paris. They divorced in 1999. A third child, Prince Michael II, was born with the aid of surrogate mother. Despite Jackson's great affinity with children, his behavior with his own was eccentric. He forced them to wear masks or veils whenever they appeared in public, supposedly to preserve their privacy. A few photos exist of the children without their cover-ups, and their lack of a physical resemblance to Jackson is marked. Jackson's career slowly recovered from the abuse scandal, and his next studio albums, History and Invincible, the latter released in 2001, was his last album of original material, were chart-topping hits, though by then he was treading water musically. Despite the enormous influence he had on pop, hip hop, and R&B, by the late 90s he was producing nothing to much note. In the middle, founded by his friend Sheikh Abdullah of Bahrain, he reportedly began work on what would have been his first new album in 5 years. He had struck a deal with Abdullah, who wrote songs as a hobby, whereby Jackson would record some of the songs in return for the Sheikh paying records costs. As with so many of Jackson's business deals, it came to nothing. The pair fell out, and Abdullah apparently tried to sue Jackson to recover his money. Jackson's final years were marked by financial troubles and a second, even more damaging child abuse scandal. In a 2003 documentary for Granada TV, Living with Michael Jackson, the singer told journalist Martin Bashir that he often shared his bedroom with young child friends. one of whom, a 12 years old, appeared in the program holding hand with Jackson. This led to Jackson being charged with 7 counts of child abuse and a trial that transfixed both the media and fans until he was acquitted 5 months later. Despite the innocent verdict, it was essentially downhill from there. He moved to Bahrain and embarked on the Hill Father album. Back in America, his finances were in a tangle that kept the lawyers busy. He had lived behind his means for years and was also coming up against the matter of a $270 million loan from Bank of America that he found difficult to repay. The title to his Beyond Neverland ranch, vacant and crumbling since the move to Bahrain, hung in the balance. Structuring his debt, he hung onto the ranch by the skin of his teeth. After years away from live performance, Jackson was due to come back in grand style next month with a massive series of dates at London's O2 Arena. Tickets for the 50 shows sold out instantly, providing that thousands of people were still laundered and still lured by the promise of the old stardust. Even then, there were wild stories. One was that Jackson, who had been looking increasingly frail, and was said to be suffering from skin cancer, was only contractually obligated to appear on stage for 13 minutes at each show. Like so much else about him, it may have been true, but it was probably just razzle-dazzle. His children survive him. Michael Jackson, pop musician, born 29th August 1958, died 25th June 2009.